I now call motion 76, Miami 5, moved by Unite, seconded by Unison. Which is the red button? I don't know.
Chair, Congress, Len McCluskey, Unite, moving motion 76. Brothers and sisters, this is a motion that speaks to the very heart of what we as a movement are. It's about international solidarity with trade unionists and about human rights. It's about the extreme hostility of right-wing groups within the USA towards Cuba. And it's about the fight against terrorism, the real fight against terrorism, the sort of terrorism which has seen 3,500 Cubans killed at the hands of ultra-right-wing groups that have attacked Cuba over the past 50 years. Congress, the Miami 5 are Cubans and trade unionists who are convicted for trying to defend their country by gathering information on Cuban exile terrorists operating out of Miami. They were not guilty of any act of violence, and their convictions have been condemned by the United Nations. The powerful Cuban exiles in Miami ensured an unfair trial, and even the US government attorney on the case has acknowledged that people who are sympathetic to Cuba cannot get a fair trial in Miami. And the sentences they received were vindictive and cruel. All this is scandal enough, but in prison in the States over the past 10 years, their human rights have been further violated. They have been denied visits from their families, visas refused for mothers, wives, and children. This is a clear breach of their rights under international law and has been condemned by Amnesty International. We call them the Miami 5 or the Cuban 5. But colleagues, I want you to remember them by their names: Fernando Gonzalez, Ramon Labanino, Antonio Guerrero, Renny Gonzalez, and Gerardo Hernandez. For these are individuals like you and I, with families and loved ones. Conference, I've had the privilege of meeting the families of the 5 in Cuba. You know, colleagues, the rhetoric in speeches at conference is important, but there is nothing that can compare the look of sadness and injustice in the eyes of those who are aggrieved, and the hope that they place in the hands of the international community. People like Adriana, a decent young Cuban woman who has not seen her husband for 10 years and who was interviewed by Belgian TV, who asked her when were her most difficult times. She said, "Every day when I go into the dining room and there are empty chairs around the table where my husband and the children I have longed for should be." Or Olga, who has not seen her husband for 8 years, and their 10-year-old daughter Yvette, who has seen her father twice and longs for him to cradle her in his arms as she falls asleep. Conference, our movement must now break through the wall of silence that has surrounded this scandal. Thanks to our contacts with US unions, we have now managed to get the Miami 5 on the agenda in the States. But we need to ensure that our Labour government puts pressure on the US administration to stop this persecution and to see justice is done. We want you to get involved. Donate money from your branches to the Cuba Solidarity Campaign. Write to the Miami 5 themselves and let this Congress's voice be heard, not just in Washington, but in the dungeons of the United States by the victims of this abuse of justice. We are with you. You are not alone. These 5 men could be forgiven if they were full of bitterness, hatred, and revenge, but they are not. There's a book that's been published called Letters of Love and Hope, a compilation of letters to and from the families and the 5. It shows the humanity and dignity of these men, and in many ways captures the very spirit of Cuba. Antonio Guerrero, one of the five, is a poet in his own right. And in finishing, Chair, I would like to share with conference one of his poems written to his two sons, Gabriel and Tonito. It's a short poem, and it's called You Are. You are my hand if I cannot greet faraway friends. You are my voice if I cannot denounce in the round tables of ideas. You are my smile if I cannot console in the purest hour. You are my dream if the moment arrives that I can dream no more. Conference, it's the duty of all free-thinking people to make sure that Antonio and his four comrades are allowed to continue their dream. I move.
Go, Norma.